Hello, everyone. For now, make sure you're muted, just so we don't get any extra background noise. So I think everyone knows who I am. I have taught many of you. So I've been at Beth Meyer for more than 30 years now and teaching Hebrew and Torah chanting for a good 15 years at this point, which just seems crazy. So I'm excited to have you all here. So kind of the outline for tonight, I'm going to start, I think, with, I wanted to address the questions from our in-person meeting. They were anonymous. I don't know who the questions were from or if those people are even here tonight, but hopefully they'll see the recording. So I wanted to spend just a little bit of time on answering those questions that were specific, more for Torah Trope rather than the Hebrew, but I want to spend a little time on that. We're going to have a short 5-minute breakout room to take a look at a list of words that seem to be challenging for a lot of people, and give you a chance in your breakout rooms to sort of discuss and kind of figure out how those words should be pronounced. And then we'll go through some of the rules, and then I'll actually review that. And then hopefully at the end, I'll have time to look at a particular portion back from Chayei Sarah, and I'm going to show it in, I think I have 3 or 4 different versions of it from various sources so that you can get an idea of what kind of sources you might find helpful. All right, so first thing I wanted to address. So someone asked, again, I don't know who the questions came from, but there's a question about triennial reading and what on earth is the triennial reading. So I'm going to explain that as briefly as I can. And if you have questions later, come find me or send me an email. So essentially, every week we read a different portion of the Torah, and everyone around the world is reading the same portion or the same parsha. And the portions are long. My hands can't get very big on Zoom, but the portions are very long. And the conservative movement adopted the triennial reading many, many years ago. Our congregation adopted it when Rabbi Solomon came. And there's been a couple good reasons. One is as a congregation, we wanted the service to be shorter. It was, at the time, it was probably a 3-hour Shabbat morning service, and we really wanted to condense that. So that was reason one. Reason number 2 is to learn a whole portion is very challenging. We didn't have lay leaders that could do that. I, for one, would not be able to, even now, to learn a full parsha. And we really wanted Rabbi Solomon to have time to do things other than preparing Torah portions all week long. We wanted him to be able to do some chaplaincy, meet with congregants, do some outreach, all those kinds of things that he uses his time for and his skills. So we switched to the triennial reading, and what it is we take that whole portion. So the very first portion of the year, right after Simchat Torah, is Bereshit. In the beginning, we start with Genesis, and there's all these long stories, fabulous stories in that first reading, but it's about this long. So this year we're in the first triennial. So we read the first third of Bereshit, and then the following week we have Noach, and we read the first third of Noach. The next week I think is Lech Lecha. We read the first third of Lech Lecha, and it keeps going. So we're advancing a portion each week, just like everyone else in the world, but we're only reading this year the first third. Next year, we'll pick up where we left off. So we'll read the middle third. So again, we'll start again right after Simchat Torah. We'll be back in Genesis and Bereshit. That first portion, we'll read the middle section. And then the next week, Noach, but the middle section, and that keeps going. And then the third year, we'll read the final section of each portion. So we're still advancing our way through the Torah, but we're just reading a shortened version. The big advantage of that is the portions are shorter. And for all of us and all you amazing people who are reading Torah, it has really made it accessible for us so that we don't have to read this much. That's too big for my Zoom screen, right? We can read this much. There are some that are longer than others, but in general, they're much shorter than they would be if we did the whole reading. There are a couple readings that that we kind of adjust each year so that we make sure that we're reading it. The prime example is coming up, Sisterhood Shabbat, where we read the Song of the Sea, and the Triennial will always include that. So some years those portions are a little bit longer because we're really kind of stretching. We'll read the part up to the Song of the Sea and including, and then some years we'll start with that and go past that. So I think there's a couple during the year where we do that, where we want to make sure that these important readings are chanted every year. But for the most part, we're doing little bits. So again, the advantage is much more accessible readings for us lay leaders, shorter service, which is really nice. The other thing that I like, oh nice, Barbara's going to be doing the Song of the Sea this year. That is awesome. The other thing that I like, and at least in my previous conversation or congregation, was that they would focus the discussion each week on that third. I'm not sure that the rabbis Solomon do that. They kind of, pick a little passage to discuss each week, but ours were very focused on that section that we were reading. So it made it really nice. We'd have, much more, well, we had varied discussions because each year we were discussing a different part of it. So that's the Triennial. I hope that helps and makes more sense. Okay. The next thing, that's the one thing I didn't pull up. So this is going to be kind of a 2-in-1 little tidbit. So the question was, how do I know when trope symbols deviate from their usual sound? And I wasn't quite clear on what that question meant, but I'm going to share my screen and show you what I think they were asking about. And let's see, I want to be on. Go. There we go. By the way, this is the outline. This is what we'll be covering tonight. And I can send you guys a copy of this later, but this is essentially what we'll be going through. So I'm here, but what I want to do is to answer that question, I'm going to pull up my resources. So I don't know if all of you, sorry about the headlines here, bethmeyer.org. I don't know if all of you know how to find resources that I have put together. But if you go to our homepage, go to Learning, scroll down to Adult Ed, and then scroll over and click on Hebrew classes. And on the far left are my recordings. If you look at the Torah Trope one, these are recordings and handouts from my classes. So if you ever want a review, and again, this is the melody that I use, but it hopefully is close enough to what you use to be helpful. But I have all the trope notes and their melodies on this website. So everything from here down is recordings that hopefully can be helpful for you. And then these are from the textbook, so you don't have to worry about those. But what I wanted to take a look at, and you're welcome to use any of these handouts as you like, is let's take a look at this one first. So this is a list of all the trope names. And what I think the person might be asking about is the lookalike tropes. So I wanted to just point those out, see if that's helpful. Again, if this doesn't answer your question, send me an email later and we'll, I'll make sure to get up with you and clarify it a little bit more. But there are some lookalike tropes. So I'm going to start with the mapach, which looks like the less than sign, greater than sign. And the yativ looks very similar. It looks the same. And some, I gotta make that one notch smaller so you can see them both. So some texts will have more of a distinction between those two than others. So in this case, wherever I printed this out from, the mapach is bigger and the yativ is a little bit skinnier. Some of them will close in the yativ so it looks like a triangle, but they do look pretty much alike. The biggest difference is the position. So the yativ is what we call pre-positive. It always comes before the word. You won't ever find it in the word. And it's on words that are accented on the first syllable or that are only a one-syllable word. The mapach is found within the word and it's under that accented syllable. So hopefully that's helpful. So that's one of the lookalikes. The other lookalike is the pashta and kadma. It goes blue. So the pashta is here, and kadma, let me find my kadma, is right here. And they look identical, especially in this font that I have here. See if I can make it a little bit bigger. So the kadma and pashta are identical. Again, the biggest clue here is positional. So kadma will be in the middle of the word, just like most of our tropes, and it'll be on top of the accented syllable. The pashta is what we call post-positive. So the yativ was pre-positive, always comes before the word. Pashta is post-positive, always comes after the word. I think of it as kind of falling off of the word. They also function differently. The kadma is a continuing. You don't take a breath after it. Kadma vyasla, right? The pashta, you take a breath after it. Pashta, zakev katon. So it's a pausal trope. So that's a big difference in those two. They also sound different. But again, the main difference in knowing which one is which is that the pashta always is post-positive, always falls off the end of the word. The kadma will be within the word. Now, that does present a little complication. So pashta is always after the word, but what if the accent is on a different syllable? In that case, there would be a second pashta symbol. The final one tells us it's a pashta. The first one would tell us where the accent is. And we may have some examples of that later on. You can see here with tlisha gedola and tlisha katana, that might be another one of the lookalikes. So this is tlisha katana. Post-positive, like the pashta, falls off the end of the word. It's a continuing trope. Tlisha gedola is pre-positive, pre-positive, comes before the word. I was trying to highlight just that trope. There we go. Comes before the word, and like with the pashta, if the accent is somewhere else, there will be a second one in there. Let me just get rid of that. Like that. So these are two lookalikes. Tlisha katana always comes at the end of the word. It's a continuing trope. Tlisha gedola always comes at the front of the word, and it's a pausal trope. You pause after it. All right, and then the other one that may get sort of thrown into this category of lookalikes is zakef, which is actually a munach. We have all these munachs. Oops. And I always kind of teach the munach as, I teach about it as though, well, you can see where the munach is. I teach that when I'm teaching the 12 and 13-year-olds, I teach them that it's like putting on different types of clothing depending on where you're going. So if you are going to school, you wear a certain kind of clothing. If you're going to play soccer, you wear a different kind of clothing. If you're going to synagogue, hopefully, you wear something maybe a little bit nicer, right? So the munach changes its tune depending on where it's going. So the munach to zarka, these two are pretty much the same. There's sort of some that are just all the same, but this munach legarme, which we'll talk about later, has its own melody. This one is actually, this is a munach and then zakef katon, long story about that, but it has its own melody, zakef, as opposed to munach legarme. And then the munach for the etnachta, right? So each munach has its own melody depending on where it's going. All right, so hopefully that helped whoever was asking that question. And then I was going to show you one more resource from this page, which you may find helpful. And it's right here. I have to rotate it. This is from Cantor Neil Schwartz, who recently retired, but he's an amazing educator. And he put this together. This is back in 1987. I got it from one of the Cage conferences. But this takes these trope groups and helps us kind of look at those distinctions. And the primary reason that I like two reasons. One is it gives us the most common combinations of the tropes that we would find. And the other reason is it shows us where we take those pauses. So again, the yativ is a pause. We take a pause after the tiv. It's that shaded in box, as opposed to the mapach, which keeps going. It's an open box. We keep going. We don't pause between the mapach and pashta. We keep going. So you can see that. So that's just a really nice resource to have on that page. The only thing that I haven't changed in 10 years I've been using this, the sof pasuk, it needs the little sof pasuk symbol at the end. But anyway, so those resources are there. Again, I got to it by going to Beth Meyer and then clicking on learning, adult education, Hebrew, and then click on the Torah trope. All right.
I'm drafted an email to have that linked from where the rest of the Torah reader resources are.
Perfect, thank you.
Which, if people remember, under prayer, lay leader resources.
Yeah, perfect, thank you. And then the other question, two questions, both related to cantillation and learning the specific melodies. I'm going to stop the share for a minute. There we go. So there was one question, is there a good website for specific tropes? And again, probably the website that I just showed you with my recordings. I'm sure there's some with lovelier voices than mine, but mine's functional and it's very easily accessible. And then online sources and apps for recording. So a lot of people have been using Pocket Torah. It has some advantages that you can hear the pronunciation of the words. And I really, every once in a while, I'll kind of do a YouTube Google and try to find some recordings of certain portions, but it's going to be kind of hit or miss. We don't have a place at this point where, you know, we have the whole Torah recorded. So, you know, going to one of the tutors or educators they can always do a recording for you if necessary. We try and get away from those recordings as you become more confident in your skill, but that's always there in a pinch. All right, cool. All right, so I think I'm about ready for breakout rooms. I'm going to show you what you're going to be doing. So let me share my screen again. All right. Take that later. Hang on, wait for it. We're going to get there in a second. Here it is. This is what I want. Oh, it looks really tiny. So I've just learned that I can share screen in breakout rooms. So I'll be sharing this in your breakout room. I'd like 3 or 4 in a group. And what I want you to notice is the words that are in bold. These are words, either words or trope that pose specific challenges. And so I want you to take a look at those, see if in your group you can agree on how they should be pronounced, or maybe like what that little trope vertical mark thing is. There's a couple pages of them. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. You probably won't get through all of them, but take a look just at the bold words and see if you can kind of figure out how to pronounce those. And then as we go through the various handouts for all the pronunciations, you'll start to see what to do with these. All right, so I think I have to stop share to go to the breakout rooms. Welcome back. Hopefully we got everyone back. So hold your questions on that. We'll see what gets answered as we go through. So now what I'm going to be doing is going through specific concepts. Some of you who studied with me, like in Hebrew 102 and Biblical Hebrew, have gotten a lot of this, but if it's been a while since you've studied Hebrew, some of it may not be fresh. So that's kind of my goal tonight. All of this, I think, almost everything is taken from textbooks that I teach from, and I should have a list of those somewhere along the way. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start with this. This is from my Hebrew 102 textbook, and this is a reminder of the ach ending. Wait, no, come back. Resume share. Okay, sorry, hit the wrong thing. So this ach ending, and when I teach this, I say bookmark this page in your book because they all get it, we're all good, and then we turn the page and it's gone from the brains. But this is a reminder that when you have a chet with a patach, that's that straight vowel that says ah, at the end of the word, the vowel comes first. So we don't say lucha, say luach, ruach, sameach. And the other thing that that does is it moves the accent to the penultimate or second to last syllable. So Hebrew words are always accented on the final or the second to last penultimate syllable. And there's various reasons for that accent to be on that second to last syllable. When we're reading trope, it's really nice because the trope gives us that accent. So we don't have to worry about that quite so much, but we do have to remember that this ach ending is there. In the Siddur, if you were to take a look at this word, you would see that there would be a little vertical line. It's called a meteg. And it's next to it's under the letter, and it would be next to the vowel to remind you that that's where the accent is, so sameach. So if we want, let's just we're going to do a very cacophonous reading of this. And I think I'll do it down here. So you guys can all unmute. I'm used to doing this with my classes. I don't care if we're all unmuted and saying crazy things all at the same time. It's all good. But I just do like to hear it. So if you guys are comfortable, you can unmute and I won't know who's saying what. It's all good. But let's read through some of these words. So remember, it'll be ach at the end and the accent will come on the syllable before the end. All right, so number one, go for it.
Mashiach.
Good, Mashiach, good. Good, hang tight, second one.
I got a rabbi
The
here.
second one, wait, slow down. The second one.
Soleach.
Soleach, good. The third one.
Lahaniach.
Good, Lahaniach. The next one. Shabeach. And the last one on the line. Oreach. Good, perfect. Some that may sound familiar. The first one on line 4.
Potato.
To open, right? This one, last one on line 3. Shabbat. Okay, perfect. Okay, good. Questions about that before I move on? Okay, good. You can mute again.
Sharon, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm trying to find the rule here, and I'm sure there's an exception, but it's not coming out. Every time you're going to have the ach, is your trope mark because the accent precedes it. So you're going to expect to see the trope in a place which is not the ending. Is that
correct?
100% rule? Cool.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly. So the trope mark would be under that second to last syllable.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Great question. All right. Cool. All right. Now we get to our pesky Shiva. So the Shiva is this interesting vowel or vowel-like thing that I teach at every level of Hebrew, from Hebrew 101 all the way through Biblical Hebrew. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about the Shiva at some point, but for now, looking at this, the added Shiva is what they're calling it. So we have these 3 vowels here that can take a Shiva in front of it, and it's under the guttural letters. Long story about why it's there. Another time I can go into more detail about it. But for now, just knowing that that you can expect to see the Shiva added in front of the sagol, the S sound, in front of the patach, the A, and in front of the kamatz. And if it's in front of the kamatz, instead of saying A, it's going to say O. We're going to learn another time when the kamatz says O. But if you have that kamatz with the Shiva next to it, it'll be an O sound. And we'll see some examples in a minute. The other 2 won't change. So the E and the A will still have their E and A sound. They won't change. This one, I think next to the sagol is always a challenge. There's just so many dots. So it's a matter of kind of training your eyes to find that pattern of 3 and then notice that the other 2 are there. And you'll see them under these guttural letters. It makes the letters pronounceable. If I put that in the shortest version that I can. And I think I have some examples here. Yeah, so the first one's not so word. So what they've done in this textbook is they've broken out the words by a couple syllables. So they have the syllable break after the example they're looking at, and then they just repeat the word all put together. So the first one, la'asot, alechem, just noticing that Shiva is there, doesn't change the pronunciation at all. But if we look at, oh, that's a fun word. They don't have the, oh, here we go. I'm only seeing one on here. Let me know if you guys spot another one. But I'm only seeing one. What's that? Yes, exactly. The Sahoraim is like lunchtime. So that we have that hay, we have the kamatz with the shava. It's called chataf kamatz. So the shava makes it chataf, or like half. And that'll be that O sound, the Sahoraim. So just be aware of that.
What are you,
Sharon,
Sharon? I'm not sure what are you referring to as a Shabbat?
The shava is the
2 dots.
the 2 dots. Oh, they don't even show it on here. Let me show it real quick. It's the 2 vertical dots. It looks like a colon under a letter. Those are dots. So it's the colon that comes under a letter.
Sharon, the one that you're talking, the little T thing, not an aw sound anymore. Nobody says aw.
So the Ashkenazic pronunciation is aw. Sephardic pronunciation is ah. And except for, there's 2 exceptions. One is this particular version of it, this chataf kamatz will be O. And there's another one where that's a little trickier. We'll find some other examples of when the kamatz says O. But if it has the shava in front of it, it'll be an O sound.
And I'll just say, Lynn, it is kind of on the ah sound of O, side of O, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not oi, it's
Not oi. We're going to get to oi.
Like they do it.
No. So yeah, it's not aw, it's not oi. It's closer to an O. Yeah.
Sharon, on line 12,
Yes.
I was taught that when you have a kamatz in front of the chataf kamatz, that it's also pronounced as an O. So
Yes.
the word is not pronounced Sahoraim, but Sohoraim.
Exactly.
And I'm pretty sure that that's how it's pronounced in Israel, Sohoraim.
Yes, Sohoraim, exactly.
Right.
And I haven't heard that as a rule, but that's really nice to know, because there are times when this kamatz, like under the tzadi, this one here, is pronounced O, and I know one rule. And I'm sure there are others, but I didn't realize that. So if it's right before the chataf kamatz, it'll always be the O sound. Is that what you're saying, Steve?
That's what I think so.
And generally,
Nice.
the kamatz before a shva is an aw sound.
Did not know that. Okay,
There's
good.
a what sound?
The aw sound.
The aw, O, yeah.
Kod shecha is the kamatz, and then followed by a shva, and it's kod shecha, not kad shecha.
Right.
But
Is there a
but
word
that's
here,
because-
Kod Shabbat?
We will
But
get
that's
to
what-
that. Yep, we'll get to Kod Shecha.
But the reason for that, whoever said that, was that Kathy? The
think that was
reason it's
Amy.
Kod Shecha is because code is a closed syllable, meaning it ends with a consonant, and it's not the accented syllable.
Right, and I'm
Okay.
going to get to that on the next
that's
section.
why-
Yep.
That's why
Yep.
it's Kod Shecha or whatever. Yeah, okay.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. I think that was it for that. So this is complicated, but I think if you can remember to look for this chataf kamatz, look for the ah plus the shava, it'll be that O. So that's not horrible to look for, although we're looking at trope too at the same time. So, but just kind of be aware of that. And what Rabbi Steve was saying was there are certain words that just kind of become familiar that have that O sound. And we're going to take a look at those, I think, here. Yes. Okay. Let me make this bigger again. This text is from either Aleph isn't tough or Aleph isn't enough. I think it's the Aleph isn't tough. The beginner level. Aleph. Familiar with this textbook? There's a series of them. I like some things about the textbook. I don't like some other things about it. But if you haven't seen it, I think we have it in our library. It's kind of a nice resource as well. So talking about this O again. So this is the one that we just looked at. the chataf kamatz. Sounds like O as in flow, and they're introducing it closer to the O. Now this one, okay, so the kamatz, in some texts, you will see it bigger, which is really helpful. Ironically, it's called kamatz katan, which means small kamatz. But it's usually made bigger to emphasize it so you can see it better. But in certain cases, this kamatz will sound like an O. So we learned that this kamatz has the sound of ah as in father, but there are some times when it's the O sound. So kol is an example, and this is one that hopefully everyone is familiar with, meaning all or everything. It's always pronounced kol. It's never kal. Sometimes you'll see it with the dot vowel, and meaning O instead of the kamatz, but this one is always kol. So that's just a good one to know, so you don't have to think about it every time you see it.
And it's really surprising how many people pronounce cow when it's got the kamatz under it, and
Yeah.
it's just always coal, no matter
Yep,
what.
it's always kol, and whether it has the dagation in it or not. So kol and chol, they have it here as v'chol, uvchol. So whether it's a kaf or a chaf, that kamatz will still be the O sound. All right. Oh yeah, and they do talk about having the bigger kamatz. In our Siddur, you can see it if you're looking for it. You can notice that bigger kamatz in other, and we'll look at a couple other sources. Some places it's a little more difficult to distinguish that. But if we look at these words, I think some of these are really useful to know because they're more common. So let's look at this first one. Notice it has that bigger kamatz under the shin. So this is uvshoch b'cha. And I'll introduce this concept a little bit since Rabbi Steve mentioned it. Gets a little complicated, but I'm going to introduce the idea of it anyway. So the rule for this, knowing that this is an O, is it is a closed syllable. So we have that shava. And I think that was what you were saying also, Steve, is that if the kamatz is before the shava, then it's going to be that O sound. So it's a closed syllable and it's unaccented. Uvshoch b'cha. So closed, unaccented syllable, and I just kind of have that as my little mantra when I'm trying to figure it out. So this would be uvshoch b'cha. B'chochma is this next one. Same idea here. So same thing though, we have it coming before a shava. Let me get back to my draw here. So b'chochma, closed, unaccented syllable. The other ones that I wanted to point out, we're going to run across fairly commonly. Kod shecha and kod sho. So these are two that are really kind of nice to know by ear because we see them fairly commonly. And it's good to know that, again, these are going to be have that O sound. So kod shecha and kod sho. So the accent is not on the code, and it's a closed syllable. It ends with that with the consonant dalet and the shava together. I'm not going to get into closed and open syllables. That's for a deep dive some other time. All right.
Sharon, I had a question and I don't see it on here.
Yes.
So in a reading I have coming up, one of my words is yuchal. And I'm wondering now, is it yuchol? I
Good
don't
question.
I don't know the context and I can't tell you.
Yeah, I'd probably have to know the context. My guess is it's probably yuchal.
Okay, so it's below yuchal. I mean, do you know, is it chol?
I would have to see it maybe in context, unless Amy happens to know right offhand.
I don't know where it is, but the word, if I'm envisioning if it's a chaf, yud vav chaf lamed, it's yochal. Even though it's from yechola,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
But
great to know.
Is the
Pretty sure
vowel underneath it a patach, a straight line, or is it
It's a straight line. It's a straight line, and
Oh, then that's
okay? Then it's yuchal or yochal.
Yep. So this rule is only for the kamatz, the T looking vowel,
Okay.
not for the patach, not for the straight vowel.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll go back and double check what that vowel is, but I think so. Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Yep.
So Sharon, just real quickly, I want to expand what I just wrote in the chat. So the Torah Readers printout, the TorahReaders.net printouts don't actually have the bolded Kamatz Katan that you see in other fonts. It's something that we're hopeful that they'll put in the future, but they don't have it right now. That's the recommendation that I've got, since they do have recordings for most of their readings. Even if you don't need the recording for any other reason, when you first get assigned a reading and you print it out, take a quick listen through their recording and listen for those Kamatz Katans and just mark it on your sheet real quick.
Yep.
Like that would just be one workaround just right off the bat.
Yep. And Pocket Torah also. I think we had a guest reader one time, and he and Bonnie had a conversation that I joined in. There was some word that he listened to Pocket Torah, again, not so much for the melody, but just for pronunciation, and he noticed there was an O sound and couldn't figure out why. So that can be really helpful for that.
Won't
All right,
our Etzaim, will that provide it for us or not necessarily?
Eitz Chaim doesn't, our Siddur
Okay.
does. But I
Okay.
will show you a resource in a bit that has it, if you look closely enough.
Just
Go
a
ahead.
note, I've gotten burned from Pocket Torah with the person chanting pronounced it incorrectly.
Mm.
Really?
Yep.
Well, that's not nice.
No. But thankfully, Rabbi Steve helped out.
Yes.
Said,
Okay.
oh, you're wrong, Bonnie.
All right, couple other things. So I think most of you or all of you know that if you have the Kamatz Yud or the Patach Yud, it says I instead of ah. There is one exception to it, which we're going to look at in a minute. A lot of you know that Oi, the Cholam plus the Yud, says Oi like in boy or Oi vey. Goyim is a good example of that. And a lot of you may not know, this is my favorite, is that U plus the Yud says Ui. We have a lot of that in the High Holiday liturgy more than anywhere else, but it's really fun and it's just kind of
Can
nice.
you say that again, Sharon?
It says Ui,
Ooey.
Ui,
As-
like
as
Ui
in-
gooey. Yeah.
As in gooey.
Yes,
Right.
exactly. Not terribly common, but just to be aware that it is there and it'll show up every once in a while. So we have the I, which we know. I always teach that, the Yud is tiny, but it's very powerful. It influences a lot of the vowels. So we have the I, Oi, and Ui. All right, cool. I think that was it.
There's a prayer at the beginning of the morning service. I think it's the Asher Yatzar, where it says, Galui v'yadua lifnei chisei chivodecha. Okay, and it's Galui.
Galui. Yeah.
That's the one that I remember.
Yeah. That's it's nice to know. And it's kind of fun when you run across it. It's like, oh, I got one of those. All right. A couple other things. And I'm easily going to run past the hour mark. So hopefully Kathy can stay on and keep recording. If you all need to leave, I didn't really put a time limit on this. I could do this all night, but I won't. But I do want to cover what I planned. So if you can't stay past the 1 hour mark, just know that Kathy can keep recording. Is that right? Okay, good, perfect. All right, so a little bit about the Vav. This is from Chanting the Hebrew Bible, which is a fabulous resource. If you're going to get it, get the student edition. It has more than enough. There's a full version that's, 500 pages or something, but it's a lovely resource. So noticing the difference between the and va. So the means and the va is it's this odd little thing in Hebrew. It changes the tense of the verb. Some of them call it a reversing vav or vav conversive, something like that. So notice that this says, and you shall lie. So that's the future tense, as opposed to vatishkav shile, which is past tense. The year and let him see versus he saw. So be aware of that versus and I would say that for most prefixes, and actually the next one is going to give examples of that. So l is a prefix meaning to or for. B means in or with. But if we have the ah under it, it adds the to it. So it's a sort of a contraction of a prefix. So b ear with the shava under it is in a city. Ba ear in the city. So be aware of the b versus the ba. La'ish to a man as opposed to la'ish to the man. So it's subtle. My best advice for that is to learn it when you're learning it the first time. So as you're learning, and we talked about this when we were in person, but as you're learning your portion, be just really aware of those vowels so you don't have to relearn it. All right, and then this is an interesting little bugaboo thing. Very often we'll have a prefix in front of Adonai, and we don't add a syllable to it. So we don't say ba Adonai, we say badonai. La plus Adonai is ladonai. Kadonai. Lelohim is a nice one. Belohim. So same idea. It doesn't add a syllable. Mostly we see that in front of Adonai. So just be aware of that. It's not going to be ba Adonai or va Adonai, badonai, ladonai, kadonai. So that's a really good one to know.
But that doesn't work when there's a mem. So it's like may
Adonai
or may Elohim. With the mem prefix, you pronounce both syllables.
Yes. And is there a way that we would know that? It would have another vowel, right? Maybe.
Probably.
Yeah, we'd have to find some examples of that. So for the most part, it'll be that it'll be kind of a contraction. And then the last thing on this section is being aware of the accent. And those who studied Torah Trope with me, you know I'm a stickler for accents, and you can see reasons why here. Excuse me. So again, the trope mark gives you the accent. Ba'a, she is coming. Ba'a, she came. And it's sort of hard to see here, but there's a little rivi'i here and a tipcha here. So the accent can really change the meaning of a word or a phrase. Again, as you're learning your portion, be really aware of where those accents are, because it's much easier to learn it than to unlearn it. All right. I think I have two more things to share with you, and then we'll take a look at a couple versions of the portion. So this is an interesting one. So the letter Vav sometimes looks like this. It's a vowel called a cholam, and it makes the O sound. So here we have toe, bo, ko. But sometimes it says vo. So the question is, when is it vo and when is it o? So if we look at these examples here, notice that the first syllable has its own vowel. So we have ts and then vo, ah and vo. So in general, Hebrew reads consonant, vowel, maybe end a consonant without a vowel at the end. So we have two syllables here. So we have consonant vowel, s, and then we have to have a consonant next, s, vo. Here we have a, consonant vowel. The next thing has to be a consonant vowel, so avo. So some nice examples here, avon, which we see fairly often. This one is nice, everyone knows this word. And this is kind of a good example to remember as a sort of a template. Like, how do I know if it's a vo or an o? Think of the word mitzvot. So we have this shava stops that syllable. So we have mitz, and then the next thing has to be a consonant. So it's not mitzot, mitzvot. Same idea here. We have mitz, vo, and then we have that I ending, mitzvotai. So if we look at that, so looking at these first ones, we have avo, tzvo, o, avo. So a little challenging, but that's something just really important to be aware of, whether it's one syllable or two. All right. I think that's what I wanted to, wait, let me see if this gets into the av. This is the other one I wanted to do. Okay, so I showed you earlier that When we have the kamatz yud or the patach yud, it says I. And that's true most of the time, but sometimes we add a vav at the end and it becomes its own diphthong and it says av, not I've. And kind of my key word for that is b'mitzvotav. We don't say b'mitzvotav in our blessings, right? We say b'mitzvotav. So the way to think of it is think of, let's see if I can just draw it here. The yud, or sorry, the vowel plus the yud plus the vav makes that one sound av. So we have alav is not alive, uvanav, not uvanaiv, korav or koraav. So we have that av ending. Again, b'mitzvotav, I think is probably the easiest one to remember. In that list that you looked at in the breakout rooms, there's another example of that. So that's a really important one to be aware of. And okay, yeah, I think that's, yeah, I'm not going to go through those, but we'll send you these handouts if you want to take another look and practice and get some more practice. All right, and then I think the final teaching here is the final kaf. Not very common, but it is there and you'll run across it every once in a while. And it's good to recognize. And the most common one where we hear it is in the priestly blessing, the blessings that the rabbis do if there's a special simcha, or we see it in the afternoon service on the high holidays. So Ya'er Adonai Panav, there's that av, Vichuneka. So not very common. Generally, if you have a chaf versus a kaf, the rabbis generally won't correct it vet, but this one they're very particular about. So vichuneka. So notice that dot inside of the final kaf. Again, not very often, but it is really good to know that it's there. I think there was one last week. So just
I had one.
yeah. So just to be aware of that. All right. Okay, cool. Okay. I want to do two more things, and I'm trying to figure out which is probably more important for this group. Let me go through, just in case some of you have to leave. I'm going to come back to looking at a particular portion. And I want to go through the list that we looked at, or that you all looked at in the breakout rooms. So these are some phrases that Rabbi Eric Solomon put together for us to review and make sure that we're comfortable with it. And I'll probably highlight as I go along. I know they're bolded, but it makes it a little bit easier to see. And I can make it a little bit bigger. So did anyone figure out what's going on here? You can unmute and pipe in if you'd like.
I think we were scrolled to the next one.
Oh, you scrolled to the next page?
No, I think
They weren't able to scroll if you had it.
Viomer. Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
did
we
other
couldn't
people
see
see,
that
or did
one.
I have a?
No, we couldn't see it.
Oh,
We
bummer.
started on one.
Yeah, the next one down.
9.
Oh, the next. Okay, gotcha. So
but
let me
to
yeah.
answer the question, I think you pause in between Elohim and Laor.
Exactly.
So
Perfect.
it's Elohim and then Laor, and it doesn't have to be a long pause. It just has to be a momentary pause.
Exactly. Exactly. So Elohim, Laor, Yom. Typically, we wouldn't have a pause between a mapach and a pashta. There's different reasons for having it there.
Yeah.
The way I learned it, I don't know if anybody else learned it differently, but I learned it as so that it's not a grammatical pause. It's more, it's so that you don't combine the two words into one. So you don't come up with like Elohim La, which I don't know, maybe means something else. I don't know, but that's the way I learned it. But just if you take a little pause there, and it can feel weird because we don't usually pause between those two tropes,
Right.
but that's what that vertical line is. Beautiful. All right, how about at the end? What is this word?
Echad.
Echad, exactly. Echad. And I think it fairly often gets mixed with echar or achar, and I think that's further down that we'll see that. So that's echad. Be aware of the dalet and the resh.
A lot of my students confuse chet and tav.
Yes.
They don't see the little hook at the bottom of tav on the left of the letter, and so they would read that at tad.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And I have to correct them on that and show them what the difference is.
Yes, I teach it as the toe. The tav has a toe on it.
A toe. Okay.
Yeah. So that works. All right. This next one, we talked about the vav and the and when it makes a V sound and when it doesn't. Anyone got want to try this word?
Yikavu.
Yes, good.
Kavu.
Yikavu. Yikavu. Good. So we have here this first vav. So again, if we go by consonant, vowel, the next one has to be a consonant, and then we need a vowel. So it's not yikavuv. I've seen all kinds of interesting things with it, but yikavu. All right, perfect. This next one, same thing that we saw in the first one, Elohim, and then take a breath, tardema, or a little pause. Again, typically we wouldn't have a break between a dargat to vir, but we take just a little pause in there, Elohim, tardema. So just be aware of it. This is much easier to learn as you're learning it than to go back and try and remember that.
Is Rabbi Solomon correcting that now? What I've observed is he wants us to do it, but he doesn't correct it when we're up there if we miss it. Is that
Correct.
right?
Yeah, I don't think he's correcting it, but it might make him cringe.
Yeah.
Kind of the way I'm looking at it. I don't know if he's going to see this recording or not, but so just be aware of that so as not to slur those letters together. All right, how do we pronounce this next one?
Solo tav.
Tive or tav?
Tav.
Tav, exactly.
Tav.
So think of b'mitzvah tav, right? That's the key word. Mitzal o tav. Good. I'm not sure why he pointed out this next one, but we're going to take a look at it anyway. So this final word in this phrase, I think the accent was what he was thinking about. How would you pronounce this one?
Tachtena.
Tachtena.
Tachtena. So the sof pasuk is another one of those post-positive tropes. It always comes after the word. So this little vertical line called a metag tells us where the word is accented. Tachtena. And Rabbi Steve, this would be a good word for your students. You've got the tav and the chet right next to each other.
Right.
Sharon?
Yeah.
So the words in the Elohim prompted me to remember something that wasn't even accurate, but I remember that there was something that I was supposed to know that I don't. It was a word that, Bonnie, you've talked to me about it and I just never absorb it. The word that looks like something else, but you're supposed to say it as the other word.
Elohim. Yes.
Yeah.
So
Elohim.
and I don't think we have an example of it in here.
I don't think it's in Torah. I think it's just in Haftarah.
It's just in Haftarah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Then I don't have to worry
So
about
what
it.
Sean is
Done.
asking about is
It's in Torah. It's in the
Is it?
in where?
Adonai, Adonai, al Rachum v'chanim.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, no, I take it back.
No, because that's
That's
Adonai.
right. Adonai
Yeah.
Elohim is only half Torah, sorry.
Yep. So Adonai Elohim, what Sean is asking about is in Haftarah, we will see Adonai Elohim, but the Elohim is spelled like Adonai. So it looks like Adonai. And the only
It's the spelled out Adonai and
Yes.
then the Yud Hey Vav Hey.
Thank you. And the only way to tell is that the second Adonai will have that hirik, that E vowel under it. And that signals that it's Elohim and not Adonai. So I remember Sharon Mayer teaching me that one. So a long time ago. So if you're
Only
just reading
Haftarah.
Torah, you don't have to worry about it. Yeah, perfect. All right, this next one, super important because it's all over the Torah. How do you say this?
Viomer.
Viomer. So the accent is on the yo, very important. Viomer. Most of the time, I'd say maybe 90% of the time, you're going to have Viomer. Every once in a while, you'll have Vayomar. Different vowel at the end, different accent. But most of the time, it's going to be Viomer. So just be aware of that accent there.
I sort of thought that Viomer is at the beginning of the verse Vayomar is in the middle of the verse.
Oh,
And I
interesting.
might be wrong on that, but the problematic thing for me is they look exactly the same in unvoweled Hebrew. So you have to look at a voweled text to know which one it is.
Yes, exactly. And again, that's another one to learn right the first time around. So really being aware of those accents. Viomer.
Wouldn't that be like present tense and past tense possibly? Viomer, God, Viomer Adonai Elohim Lemor, and God spoke to Moses. Vayomar
Right.
could be the past tense, Amar, instead of Omer.
Oh, Viomer.
I
But
think
if it's Vayomar, you still
He
have
spoke.
the
He
changing
spoke.
Bob in the middle at the beginning. So I
Yeah.
still think either way, I think it's past tense.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I don't know enough grammar to answer that one intelligently. All right, let's take a look at a few more. So this one, how do we pronounce this?
Ahiv.
Achiv.
Achiv.
Achiv. We're going to hear that vav. Later on, we're going to see that pesky word that has a vav that we don't pronounce. But this one is achiv. Good. Okay, here we go. This is one that I want to show. Let me see if I can make that a little bit bigger. There we go.
Vayakam.
Yeah.
Vayakam.
Vayakom.
Vayakom.
Vayakom. Yeah,
Yes,
so
it's
this is
on
a
the
hard
yud.
one, right?
Accent
Vayakom.
on the yud. Vayakom.
Yeah, so notice where the accent is. The trope is under that yud. It comes, the trope comes after the vowel, Vayakom. This is from Safaria, and I just noticed this recently. If you look super closely and they're right next to each other, you can tell that that second kamatz is bigger. You guys
Right.
tell? If they're not right next to each other, I'm having a harder time distinguishing, but when they're right next to each other like that, you can see. So that first kamatz is ya, and then the second one is ko, vayakom. And that comes back to that rule, which I'm going to mention, but it takes a while for it to all sink in. So kom, this is a closed, it ends with a consonant, closed, unaccented syllable. So it's vayakom. If the accent was on the last syllable, it would be vayakam. But it's vayakom. That trope gives us the accent, gives us lots of hints to the pronunciation. Here we also have that I sound, right? Vi and then yakom. But notice
Are
the
you
accent.
saying that if the trope was in a different spot on the word, then you'd pronounce the whole word differently?
Yes. Yeah, that's why trope is important, because it gives us those really, gives us lots of information. Yeah. And I just recently realized that Safaria does this. Again, it's kind of hard to distinguish unless they're right next to each other. But it's good to know that Safaria has that. And if you guys haven't seen Safaria, that's I'll put it in the resources. Okay, good. How about this next one?
Mitzrayma.
Yes, Mitzrayma. So here we have that pashta comes at the end of the word, falling off the word. The second pashta tells us that that's where the accent is. So the accent is on Rai. So different from Mitzrayim, right? Mitzrayim is Egypt. Mitzrayma means towards Egypt. So in the direction of Egypt. So that hey ending will have that connotation that you're moving towards that location.
So Sharon,
Mhm.
I mean, I know that that's Mitzrayma, but can you grammatically, why are we getting the I sound in the middle of the word?
Yes, we have the plus the yud.
But like we don't have that with tav. I mean, then we just said when we had the tav
Right, so
yud.
Yeah, so there's, I think that av, I think is only at the end of a word, but the I sound can be anywhere in the word. So like here on Vayakom, we have it at the beginning, Vayakom. Here we have Mitzrayma.
Some
Yes, I
of
think-
some of them, the vayakom comes kind of naturally. Like you don't even have to try to say it that way. That's just the way. Like it's almost impossible for at least English speakers to say a true va. Yeah, like it's a diphthong. It's smooth. It runs in there on its own. So like you
No.
probably didn't even notice that you were doing that.
I think more, okay, this is about when you have a kamat or a patach plus the yud.
Mhm.
I thought that was
But
only at
the
the end of the
exception-
word it turns to an
Mm-mm.
I.
Always.
No, it's not only at the end of the word, and the exception to the vowel with the yud is in tav, like in biblical tav. That's pretty much the only time you see it. And this one also, like what Kathy said about vayakom, you don't even understand that you're saying vai. If you said mitzrayima and you put it together, it's mitzrayima. It comes out mitzrayima.
Okay.
So it's a shorter vowel and it sort of works, but it's not mitzrayima, it's mitzrayima.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the tav, that's the exception case. Otherwise, it's always I.
The
Yes.
tav yud vav.
Mhm.
And
And it's not necessarily tav,
And
because
that's
you can
what I'm
have a
wondering.
lav. So it's really the
Yeah.
yud, and vav.
and the yud vav, right? Yud vav.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Mhm. And I think we'll see a couple more examples of that. All right, this is another interesting one. So we saw that the final half can become a final kaf. Here's an interesting one, and I think Shama and I had readings over the past couple of weeks with lots of feminine things in there because we were reading about the midwives. So go ahead and pronounce this word.
Tashkeva.
Ashkenaz.
And
Batashkena.
So the gay ratios here tells us that's the accent. The final nun has a vowel there, not very common. You can see a couple other final nuns here that don't have vowels. So vatashkena. Again, not terribly common, but something to be aware of, that we have that the final nun with an ah inside of it.
it feels like it's a misspelling. It feels like it should be like a nun hey.
Yeah, I think all of us kind of look at it like, huh? This next one, I'm not sure what the concern was with this word, but let's go ahead and read this word anyway. Hahu. Hahu. Good. Perfect.
Well, I'm gonna disagree with that one, okay?
Okay.
Because the question for me is under the second hey, is that a tavir?
It
Or
is.
is that a mercha with a dot under the hey, in which case it's pronounced ha-he, not ha-hu.
No, it's definitely
But it comes
tavir.
after the dargah, yeah.
It's
Well,
a tavir.
wait,
It's
but-
definitely a tavir, but the issue is that same word without vowels in the Torah can be ha-he.
Yes,
Right.
and
You
we're
have to
going to
pay
see
attention to
that.
Well,
Yeah, I think I
You
have
have
it
to pay
somewhere.
attention.
let me keep saying this. Look at the trope symbol under et avihen. That's a tipcha. So why couldn't we read the trope symbol under ha-hu or ha-he as a mercha and with just a dargah in front of it, and then it becomes balayla ha-he.
No, because you have a dot on the vav, so it has to be an,
Yeah, it's
Ooh.
followed by a shuruk. You can't ignore the shuruk.
yeah, thank you. I didn't know that
And
word. Amy.
typically after dargah, we're not going to have
It's
a
more, and
mercha.
it's usually more of a separation. If it's a mercha and then the vowel, you would see more separation than that. Mercha is bigger.
Yeah.
But you have to
And-
also look at what it means. Hahu, doesn't it mean he? I mean, if you
That-
try to look at
Well,
it, you're not going to see it
Hahu
ha-he,
means that.
that.
Yeah, on that
Right.
night.
On that night.
Okay, so
No,
why
well,
would
that begs the question, because I would think it would be Laila ha-he if we're saying
Right,
that.
that's Lila's feminine.
Right, no, but we say Lila Tov, right?
Oh,
We don't
thank
say
you.
Lila
Yes, you say Lila Tov. Yes, you do.
Yeah, no, yeah, Lila is masculine. It has an oat ending in the plural, but it is masculine. Yeah.
Oh,
All right, cool. I'm going to keep moving along. We could do this for hours, clearly. This is an interesting one. So look at this last word on the line that I've highlighted. What you got?
The shichva.
Good, b'shikva. So this is a peak inside of a hey, ma peak hey, and it's an aspirated hey. Usually if we have a hey at the end of a word, for example, I lost my mitzrayma, but if we look at this one, the hey doesn't have if it doesn't have a vowel, it's not
In
pronounced. We don't
Balila.
hear.
Sharon, there's one right in the line.
Thank you. Oh, Lila, thank you. That's an easier word. Balila, right? So the hey doesn't have a vowel, so we don't hear it. But if there's a dugage, or this dugage is actually called a mapik. If there's a mapik or a dot inside of it, then that hey is aspirated. It's very subtle. It's very hard to hear. The rabbi loves it when you do that. So, but yeah, b'shikva. It's not ha, it's not ha. It's b'shikva. Like you're letting out a breath.
I was taught that there's a difference between Ashkenazi communities and Sephardic communities in that pronunciation, that Ashkenazim do not aspirate it, Sephardim do. So I would pronounce it without aspirating it.
Although we use the Sephardic pronunciation.
Yeah.
So,
but we don't chant to Sephardic trope.
Right, we don't use Sephardic trope. Yeah, we're kind of complicated.
Like such a hair splitting, but like there it is.
Yeah.
But when we do the Kaddish, we don't do Yitgadal the Yitkadash Shemech Rabbah Shemech Rabbah.
But that's Aramaic, so I don't want to confuse Aramaic.
Sorry.
All right, so we're going to keep going. I think this next one he wanted really just because of lookalike letters. Oh, you know what? We have that O again. Yeah, we have the O again, and two O's, right? So if we, so how would you say this? There's one.
Mimochorat.
Exactly, mimochorat. Yeah, so the second one, because it comes before the Shavah, as we just learned, is going to be O, and then this third letter has the Chataf Kamatz, so be mimochorat.
Now, interestingly, Trope Trainer, I think, pronounces it machorat.
Yeah, I don't hear so much of the O sound in Trope Trainer, but okay, cool. Now we have this. Oh, this one's always fun. Okay, what's this?
Vayevk.
Yes.
Well, that was well, I read that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Nice. Vayevk. So
I read
notice
that
the final kaf as opposed to the chaf, right? It has the dot inside of it. Vayevk. The double shavah at the end of a word is complicated. It's usually or often feminine, but I'm not seeing anything feminine in here.
Is neck feminine?
Oh, maybe neck is feminine. Yeah, I don't know the word for neck.
Can say it again. Let me slow it down, that final. Say it again.
Vayevk.
Yeah, if there are any of you that are chanting the Megillah this year with the rabbis, you see it a lot in the Megillah because we're talking about Esther all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, so it's a feminine form. It's a past tense feminine.
Vayevk.
Vayevk. So it's the k because that's the dot inside of it. So it's not vayevk. Vayevk.
Vayevk.
Yeah.
Never chanting again.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Okay, look at this final word in this line. What you got?
Savarav.
Yes, Savarav. Good. So the negation side of the vav can be ignored. We have tsa, va, the aleph is there for another long story. And then we have this av ending that we were talking about. So the av, the kamatz yud vav is av, not iv. Savarav. Beautiful. Yes, a lot of these are, this is the one I wanted to look at. So we saw the achad earlier, or echad. What's this one?
Achar.
Achar. So notice, again, just being aware of the resh versus the daled. Here's the pesky one that got this whole thing started.
Right.
All right, what is this word?
He.
We don't pronounce the vav. It's I asked Rabbi Solomon soon after he got here, I think, so 15 years ago. There's some very convoluted grammatical thing that has left my brain. But it is he. I think it's like a contraction. And we don't really have to know the full grammar, but know that when you see this word, it's he. And again, in the Torah, it'll look like who, because we don't have that vowel in there. So again, as you're learning it, make sure that you're paying attention to that. Oh, there we have he. He again, I almost said it. Chef.
Sharon, do you happen to know what that translates as? So like when we're looking at translations, we can look for it?
It is,
It's just,
She.
it's she.
she.
Or just a different
Yeah.
version? Okay.
It's almost as if Hebrew in that particular instance is using gender neutral pronouns. He and who look exactly the same.
Oh, that's true.
It's the same word.
And in modern Hebrew, the vav somehow turned into a yud, so it's easier to
That
read.
much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I learned it. Who is he and he is she.
exactly. And me
And
is
dog
who,
is
yeah.
fish.
Yes, and
And
dog
dog
is
is-
fish.
yeah, dog
Exactly,
is fish.
exactly.
In Ashkenaz.
Okay, a couple other ones I'm going to go through, but there's one that I want to make sure I get to. So this one, the first one on this line here is,
The whole.
yes, the whole. Good. So we have the whole. These we've been through. Oh, this is the one I wanted to look at. And what I might do is go back and make a recording of all these bold words. I'm not going to read all the verses, but the bold words, just so that you can go back and kind of check and review. How about this one?
Hagoyim.
Where's the accent?
Hagoyim.
There you go, Hagoyim. So we have that oi sound. I don't think I got an ui in here, but Hagoyim, good. And
Can we
then
go back? Can we
what's
go
that?
back up to the one above it?
Yep,
the-
hang on
the-
one sec. Let's
Okay.
do this one, because
Yeah,
this is one of the
sorry.
other rules we looked at.
Mishaleach.
Beautiful, Mishaleach. It's hard to tell. The trope is a little cattywampus here. It should be right under the, or right next to the tzere, but Mishaleach. So notice that we have the accent on the penultimate, second to last syllable, and we did the ach. Perfect. Yes, Steve, was that you?
The next group of words that starts with the shin.
Yeah.
Is it pronounced shechovtecha or shechavtecha? And I'm pretty sure it's litom va, because the accent in both places is not on the closed
Exactly.
syllable. So litom
Exactly. Yep.
and they're not big there either. It's
No,
and
they're
the thing-
not.
and shechovtecha, right?
It should be
Shechovtecha.
shechovtecha. Yep. So
Okay.
that should be the o sound. And same thing here, litom. Because yes, those are both. And like you said, Steve, they come right before the Shabbat. I hadn't really paid attention to that, but yes, so unaccented closed syllable. Yep, perfect. All right, what else do I have?
Don't they have
Oh.
to come right before the shva? Because that would be the closed part of the syllable.
Right, but there's some other like code. I think there's some other ones I can't come up with offhand. Vayakom was one of them that does not. I don't think it has the Shema.
Well, that's the final syllable, but
right.
when
Yeah, I
it's in
don't
the
know.
middle to close it, doesn't it need the, what is that, shva?
Oh, the Shiva. Maybe. Good question. We'll have to contemplate that one. All right. This is one that Amy and I had she helped me out with this today. Rabbi Solomon has a different take on it. So we have to figure it out. Amy, how would you say this word? Are you still here? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
So right, the question is it Eloha or Eloah? And I guess this is done as part of Hallel, and I had always heard Eloah Yaakov.
Yep.
Oh, I always said aloha.
I say
So-
aloha. I say aloha.
Yeah, so here's my thinking on it. Well, I always learned it as the ah. It's sort of like the ach ending when we had the with the chet at the end. If it was going to be ha, we wouldn't need that mapik. We wouldn't need the dot inside the hey, right? If the dot wasn't there, it'd be eloha. So why do we need the dot if it's not going to change that pronunciation? So I'm with Amy on this one, eloah. And I did find an article about it that said the same thing. So that one's still up for discussion. If you run across it, let me know. We'll resolve it before you're reading.
Which way did Rabbi Solomon pronounce it?
You said it was ha, eloha.
Yeah.
I think it's
That's what
eloah.
I asked about that in rabbinical school and I was told Eloha also, so.
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
interesting. We'll have to resolve that one. Okay, good. Oh, here we go. Here's some nice ones. We had a little look at this earlier. See if we remember it. What's this one?
Ladonai.
There you go.
Ladonai.
Ladonai. Good. Not La Adonai. Good. Ladonai. Perfect. We have Ladonai again. This is another one just to practice that Vav again. What is this one?
Ishtachavu.
Good. Hishtachavu. What's this one?
Elohai.
There you go. Nice. Elohai. Perfect. Oh, we have another one of these. What's this one?
Odena.
Odeka.
Decha.
Notice there's
There's
a
a-
dot inside that final letter.
Yeah, so it's
Odeka.
Odeka.
Odeka. Exactly. Odeka. Nice. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this one again. Get a nice practice out of order here.
Lamnad.
Namna.
Seach.
Beautiful. Lamnat Seach. Good. I took the trope off the ones that come from Psalms because the trope gets a little too convoluted for me. They have more symbols in there than we need. So yes, so Lamnat Seach. Perfect. What do we do with this?
Sharon, for a second, I just want to go back to the one you just said. So there's an issue with me for the sounded shva, like is that lam natseach or lam menatseach? And because the lamed is a prefix, like the word that I'm struggling with is baruchu. Is it baruchu or baruchu?
Yeah.
But lam menatseach I think is lam menatseach, although that is also how I sing it. And singing, of course, does change things up. But
Yeah.
I think there are times when the prefix doesn't merge with the shva. So the word is menatseach and it's lam menatseach, but I'm not positive.
See, I would have thought it would have a dagash in the mem if it would be.
That's what I was
lamna.
thinking.
It would have a dagash if it had to be sounded?
Mhm.
Okay, I'll have to
Yeah.
check.
Yep. And I've talked to my biblical Hebrew class where if anyone is brave enough, we'll do a whole thing just on the dagash because it's really complicated. Okay, how about this next pair? And here you can see that large kamatz.
Right. Eli Oznecha.
Good. And what are we
With the
doing with
nice
this vertical
pause
line?
in the middle.
Yeah.
Oznechai.
Yep. Oznecha. Yep. So Eli Oznecha. Nice, right? Eli Oznecha. This is a good one. How about this one?
L'ur ma'oz.
Litzur
Litzur.
Ma'oz.
Yeah,
Ma-
beautiful. Litzur ma'oz. Good. So it's not a vowel, right? We need a vowel for the ayin. Litzur ma'oz. Beautiful. Oh, and then I think there's like two more. Okay, how about this one? Hopefully everyone knows this one.
Tav.
Good. So that's your keyword, b'mitzvotav. Keep that in mind. How are you going to say this? Oops. This one. My highlighter stopped. There we go.
Kitso
Kitsotav.
Tav.
Yeah, kitsotav. Beautiful. So we have that av ending again. Good. And then Rabbi Solomon threw this in just because.
Ziv.
Ziv. Yep. Lots of lookalikes there. I think that's why he put that in there. And I think that was it.
I will say that in my Siddur for when I'm leading Shachrit for that particular song, I do have Ziv written really big in English because I've messed it up so many times. And like everybody's singing with you, so like you don't know it, but I know it.
If it wasn't Ziv, what would it be, Kathy?
I don't know why it's hard where it is, but like I want to just call it like Z rather than
Oh, interesting. Like heave, but it's he.
Right.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
Oh.
that's funny. All right. So the only thing I didn't cover tonight that I had kind of pulled up was just looking at a couple resources. And again, if you need to leave, feel free. It won't hurt my feelings. But I just wanted to, as long as we're here and we're recording, we'll go for some completeness. This is from TorahReaders.net. And as Kathy mentioned earlier, they don't yet have an indicator for the Kamatz Katan. But we do have, let's see, so we have two of them. So we have Vatamot, So you can tell this first highlighted word, the first word in verse 2, vatamot, the accent is on ta, and that kind of gives us a hint that maybe this is going to be that O sound, vatamot. And then here's our friend. What's this word? E. Good. Here's another friend. What's this one?
Believe kota.
It's not a ch, right? Not a ch, just a like your breath is going up.
Kota.
Yeah, and I will say this font is, I'm having trouble, maybe just because we've been doing an hour and a half of Hebrew, but it is a vav and then a kaf. So believe kota.
I also don't like their font. I have a hard time with that.
I
Look
don't
at that,
either,
and they're both fascinating.
And then how about this next one? This is another very common one.
Yakum.
Yes, nice. Vayakum. Good. So we have the vi, we have ya. Accent is on ya. This is like a final exam all in this one word. Vi, ya. We have two pashtas, right? This one is a pashta. This one is where the accent is. Vayakum, because the accent isn't at the end. We have that O sound.
Sharon,
So
I
this-
wonder if, I'm sorry, so this is the first thing that's sort of new to me, the word vatamot vayakom, and I wonder if it has to do with the fact that the letter before has a dagesh in it?
That's what I was wondering. Is does the dagesh play into that at all? Because they both have it.
Question.
Because
I wonder if that's what gives it that
both.
accent.
Yeah, I would have missed both of those.
Oh, interesting. And I'll show you how I knew that. So this is the new version of Trope Trainer. And I think I highlighted the same ones. And this is brand new. I think they just did this because the last time I printed it out, they actually had like a hyphen or apostrophe or something to indicate the O. But we can see it now. Vatamot. There's he again. Vayakom. So they have that nice big kamatz. Again, ironic that it's kamatz katan, but I think that's relatively new. So this is the new one. Again, you all don't have access to Trope Trainer. It used to be you could buy the program and you'd have it forever, but now it's a streaming thing and it gets a little pricey. But if you ever, need help with it, just let me know and I can help you.
It's by subscription and it's monthly and it's really not that much if you do it monthly.
Oh, how much is it per month?
Yeah, you can do it You can do it as a monthly subscription and it's not much at all.
Okay.
I know it's under $20 and I want to say it's under 15.
Okay.
It's really not bad. And I use it all the time because the recordings on the other one, they do not have most of the recordings.
They don't.
But they have all of them on Trope Trainer.
Yeah.
Very few.
So I have the older version of Trope Trainer, and I'm pretty sure it does the big kamatz for.
Yes, it does.
It
And
does.
here's the older version, which I am keeping on my very old computer. Really primarily for the printouts because I think the font is beautiful. It's much easier for me. It's easier to read. I like having the translation off to the side instead of below. There's a lot that I like about this, and I'm just hoping that my computer never dies. But you can see.
Mine did. So.
Could I offer an answer to an earlier question?
Sure.
Like, why is the dagesh you just highlighted vatamot and vayakom? The dagesh there, as I understand it, used to indicate a doubling of the letter.
Yes,
For
exactly.
pronunciation, and that still exists in Arabic. Okay, so the one at the beginning of verse 2 would originally have been pronounced vatamot. You'd hear two T's right next to each other.
Exactly.
So it doesn't affect which syllable is open or closed or where the accent is. It just indicates that originally, we don't really do it anymore, there was a second tav as part of the pronunciation. Same thing with vayakom. The first yud is part of the vi, and then the second one is the consonant yud, vayakom.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Like I said, we could do a whole class just on the dagesh, and maybe if I get brave, I'll put that together. So again, this is the old Trope Trainer. For my students, this is the printout that I always use, even for my own study, it's what I always use. But notice too that each one has their own translation. Like I talked about in our in-person meeting, always look at the translation. And then this is from Safaria. Let's see if I can move this over a little bit. don't know if I can move
The
that
other
over.
thing that TorahReaders.net does not have is the scribal inaccuracies, since Sharon's doing such a nice job of showing that verse.
Oh.
Right,
do you
so
wanna see
like,
that?
for
Yeah.
example, that little tiny.
Let me come back here.
Top
Yes.
is gonna be shown in the scroll, and TorahReaders.net would not have it printed that way.
Right.
Because it can be jarring if you haven't looked at the scroll, and then all of a sudden you're just like, look at that teeny tiny letter, and then you get distracted, and it's a whole mess.
And yeah, it looks like the new Trope
Yeah.
Trainer doesn't have it either
Right.
as well. Yeah. And then the last one, if you're not familiar with Safaria, it's this pretty amazing resource. And again, we can do another time on just how to navigate Safaria. It's safaria.org. Yes, safaria.org. I pulled up the same portion. Again, if you look really, really closely, you can see the kamats next to each other. You can see this one is a little bit bigger. You have to be looking for it, I think. This one does have the small kaf there, so that's good to know. And again, another translation is there as well. And here's that Vayakom. You can see it. To me, I just spilled tea everywhere. You can see, oh, my paper's going to absorb it. Yay. Let me just move my tea. I got the whole hour and a half without spilling. That was pretty good. But when you see them right next to each other, it seems very obvious that, you know, one's smaller and one's bigger. But just so that you know that this is available, and it'll have another translation as well.
Good idea.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
those weird
cool.
little mini letters, they're pronounced exactly the same. They just look funny.
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't know if we know why those are there. I think
Dennis,
no one knew.
where do you actually go to hear somebody chant it? What's the best? Is there like a free site to do that?
Pocket Torah is the only one, and I think that's free. It's an app.
Yeah.
But
I
again,
think
it'll
it's
have
only iPhone. I don't think it's an Android app.
Oh, interesting. I'm gonna stop the share.
I've been able to get that that app thing though on my computer. I don't remember how I got
Oh,
it,
cool.
but
Yeah.
I've had it on my computer.
So
too,
it's
Tom.
called Pocket Torah? Okay.
My version of Trope Trainer will sing to me, but it sings it in a really tinny, computerized voice. It's not a human,
But
it's not like.
you can also change the pitch,
Yeah.
Right.
And the speed.
and the version of Trope, you know, like
Right.
different accents and yeah.
Not in the new one.
Well, and
Nobody
but
has one, so-
TorahReaders.net will chant for you though.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very many.
Sometimes, but I gotta tell you, it doesn't have a lot of them on there.
It doesn't, they're not a lot
It
on.
does not have a lot. It says go to the meeting and you put it on there and it says not available.
So
They're
another,
very- At this point, I
Yeah.
haven't been able to find any of mine that were available for a long time.
so, well, we've actually, something we can discuss amongst this group is the Torah Readers does allow for us to upload recordings.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at you, tutors, like if this wants to be
Right.
some kind of project to put our recordings with our trope.
Bonnie, you
On-
just keep coming up with projects for me.
Yes, you do. And one thing I could theoretically do is
I think
if I
that feature
record
is
for a
why he stopped
student.
recording them.
Yeah, if I record for a student, I could upload it to there. Or
Mhm.
if I record it for myself or whatever I could. But yeah, the thought of like recording the whole Torah, I'm not there. Not on board with it.
Well, no, it'd just be like
Over
a
the
quarter of
summer,
it.
though, wouldn't be a bad idea to do like some. I mean, I could do some over the summer.
Yeah.
Talk to me in June.
Do you guys
And
still use the tikkun, when you are practicing reading it without the vowels? I have a tikkun from a long time ago with Sharon. Do you guys use that?
You know what? I don't, because it doesn't have some of those things that I need. Let me pull this up
The
again.
print got too small for me.
I was gonna say, I can't use
That
it.
too.
I haven't looked at it in a long time. That's probably going to be a problem.
Mine
You know
has
what else I
tiny
didn't
print.
even show you guys? That is also nice on Trope Trainer, and which is why the other reason I don't use the Tikkun. Yeah, it's too small. I'd have to blow it up. So Trope Trainer has this Matz Katan. I don't think the Tikkun does. And then the other thing that I really like about Trope Trainer, I don't know if the new one has it or not, but the Shiva
Yeah,
is
same thing.
bigger when it's pronounced. So it's always,
Right.
and that's another like deep dive. We can do one on the Dagesh, one on the Shiva. But at the beginning of the word Shiva is always pronounced. In the middle of the word, it's usually not. It's usually just a stop, the S, ream. So hopefully you can see these are bigger dots and these are smaller dots. We can see it here.
So where do you practice without the vowels if you don't use it?
Oh,
It'll give you both.
yeah, you can do
Oh my
both. I have these saved as a PDF, so I can't show you live. But on Safari, actually, I could probably go Safari. I have live here. This isn't a PDF.
Torah readers, you can do without vowels and without
Yes.
trope.
Right, it'll give you
Yeah.
both.
So on
And so
Safari,
will Trope Trainer.
yeah, so on Safari, this is safaria.org. It has a couple nice things. It has font size, so I can, make it bigger. Oops, come back. Wait, let me just go back here again. So I can make it bigger or smaller. I can change the vocalization. So right now I have it just, I have it with the trope and with the vowels. You can do it with just the vowels, which is right there. And I could do it, no, that's not what I needed. That's what I needed. And then I can make it like the tikkun, like
Okay.
that.
I like
Right,
to have
and
it. I like
Trope
it.
Trainer is essentially the same thing. There's like a heading at the top. It says what you see. You click on that and it'll give you
Yeah.
both.
And
So
we can
now-
do we can do a separate, I mean, now I feel like I'm getting myself into a series of classes, but that would be something that we could consider is doing a trope trainer tutorial, a deviate, a Shabbat, like some of these other little tidbits for those who really want more of a deep dive.
There's nothing online that has the vowels and the
No.
trope and then blank and then
Yes.
next to each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, you can do that with
You
Torah.
can do that
Torah
with the
readers.
Torah readers, and you can do it with Trope Trainer
Yep,
And pocket
yeah.
trope.
I'm gonna have to
and
like,
Pocket
go-
Trope, right? You can do it with all of them.
I'm gonna have to go look at all this
Yeah,
stuff.
But on Trope Trainer and Torah readers, you can have them together. On Pocket
Right,
Torah,
side by
you can get
side.
one or the other.
I want
Mhm.
side by side, right?
Hopefully this will let me log in.
It should.
Yeah, so this is torahreaders.net. We just find a reading.
I mean, I've had the opposite experience of Deborah. Maybe it's just my luck, but I've had every reading completely available in recording, in print, in all of it. So I think it's worth checking versus
I get it all in
assuming that
print. Well, I don't know what kind of computer you're working on, but I live in an Apple world and Apple doesn't work and play with others. So maybe that's
Yeah,
why.
that's true.
Hmm.
Yeah, so this is torahreaders.net. This one did not have music for it. But I pulled it up as tikkun, but you can do display.
Right.
So I can have just the vowels. I can have just the Torah. I can have both. What are my other options? I can make it bigger or smaller. I'm always making it bigger.
Why in the world would you want to make it smaller?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
If you're very
Um,
nearsighted.
Right.
I am very nearsighted.
And then here's play. But yeah, it doesn't seem to have that as an option.
Yeah, I mean, everyone that I've done has said this is not recording is not available.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do it on your iPad, but if you're doing it
No,
on a
I'm
computer.
on my desktop,
Oh,
Yeah.
but it's Mac.
And
so,
this
I mean,
is
it's
this
just
is a
maybe an Apple
laptop.
thing.
Well, this is a laptop and it didn't have it. So
Probably
Yeah.
won't work anything with a Chromebook.
So anyway, we have covered a ton of material. We're going to get the handout sent out to you. I'll probably in the next day or two record all those bolded words to see if that's helpful for you. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I think everyone has my email by now.